Hi, and welcome to another episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed, the Mind Management Mentors podcast. We're going to talk about something that's very close because it's emotions. We're going to be talking about emotions and the emotional states that we get into. And I think there's a fine line between understanding mental health and emotional health. And I think there's a big discrepancy. Today's definitely going to be talking about emotional health. And we've got on if I was to say that one of our guests has got over 250,000 followers on TikTok, I would say that that would put you into the authority kind of area
Okay.
of what you're going to be talking about. Without saying you're an expert in your area, but I would say that you are very authoritative and for quite good reason as well. So let's introduce yourself. Lenny, who are you? Where you from? And what do you do?
My name's Lenny Hunt. I'm a grief coach out of Boise, Idaho. I'm also an author, a content creator, YouTube, TikTok, you name them. They're all fun. They're all fun to me. Constantly design curriculum, but most importantly, I'm a grieving father. Lost my children in 2011 in a very ugly, ugly automobile accident, which is then what pushed me, to want to be a grief coach.
Yeah.
It's kind of me, man.
Yeah. So we're taking something of which we will talk about, but I think I've got a feeling, Lenny, we probably come from one of those spaces that every negative has a positive.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And I think that if there's anything going to be took away from today's podcast is how do we turn something so horrific into a positive? For a lot of people, they wouldn't be able to do that, which is I think you are the conduit of that possibility, Lenny. Would that be fair to say?
Well, yeah. Without putting words in my mouth, I would definitely agree with that. Is
Right.
that fair to say?
That's Lenny. That's absolutely fair to say. And we've not met each other. We've done a little 5 minute
Mhm.
setup before the podcast starts. But we're going to be talking about grief. Grief is
Yeah.
something that you are well versed in. You are
Mhm.
definitely well versed and experienced in it. So are we okay to go back and really deep dive that a little bit
Sure.
for the accident to the aftermath? Because you mentioned
Yeah.
something before we started the podcast of which was, I didn't want or accept there would be help for me at a certain point, but then you decided to change and move.
Yeah. Without getting into too graphic
Yeah.
detail, um, I will say that my boys and I were having just a father Sunday. It's a Saturday, beautiful day, 11 o'clock in the morning. And we were out driving in the country. And as you know, you've got country area just like I do. Uh, we came to one of those roads where one corner stops and the other one doesn't. And we missed our stop sign and we got hit right in the side. My boys passed immediately. They passed right there. So though I lost my boys, that's a blessing that they
Mm.
were able to pass there. Does that make sense? You understand?
Yes. Yeah.
Um, After that, though, I was surrounded by people that wanted to help me, but I didn't want it. Because I was just so hurt. One experience I had, and I think this is probably something that set that up. I went to a grief, I don't know what you'd want to call it, like a group of parents who'd lost their children. And, obviously never done anything like this before. So I'm sitting there and my wife is sitting with me as well. And as we start to tell our story, they ask, "Well, how long ago did this happen?" And we say, "Well, this was last week. We were told that we should start coming to these types of meetings to help us out." "Oh, no, 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 no. Um, you're coming too early," is what they said to us. You really you need to come here in a few weeks. Don't be here now, which we thought was really strange. We didn't say anything, but we said, "All right, I understand." We stayed for the rest of the night, but then it was like one person would tell their story of grief and how they lost their child, and then the next person would say, well, that's really horrible. That's ugly. I'm so sorry to hear that happened to you, but this is what happened to me. And then they would start telling their story. Da, 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 da. Someone else would sit up and say, well, so sorry to hear that happened to you. That's horrible. And I'm so sorry to hear what happened to you. That's a travesty. But this is what happened to me. Right. And so it was like each one had to be more than the other one. You know what I mean? Like back in high school, well, my brother can bench press more than your brother, right? It was
Toppers.
one of those.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was a horrible experience. Just a horrible experience. And it was just constant stuff like that, little pieces here and there that I tried to take care of everything on my own. And people who are suffering tend to make bad decisions. I think that's fair to say. You've had many, many people on your show, and they've all said that. If you're hurting and you're looking for an easy way, tend to make a bad decision.
You clearly
And
watched the podcast.
that's what happened. Yes,
You,
I have.
yeah.
In fact, I didn't say I am a fan of your show, and God, I feel like I'm fanboying out here, but when we first started talking, I'm like, man, I'm talking to a celebrity. This is cool. This is
Not at
super
all.
cool. I know that
I'm
I'm the
only a
guest, but
celebrity in my
man,
own
this is the
world.
guy. So
No,
anyway,
Lenny.
whatever.
And well, by the way, Lenny, and thank you very much for having that jovial
Mhm.
conversation about such a horrible subject.
Yeah.
It is brutal. It's to be speaking to a father who's lost his children in a car accident. So there's going to be a lot of people going, "Oh, I'm going through grief. My grief's maybe not as bad as Lenny's grief," or
Sure.
somebody else might be going, "Oh, but my grief's worse than Lenny's grief." You know, is there a code to what grief is to somebody? Is there a
Okay.
scale of grief?
Ooh. I'm
It's a
so
good
glad you
question,
asked
right?
that. No, 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 no. I'm glad you asked that because, all right. So in case we this is what I did. It's like, man, I love this guy and I hear how he talks to people and they're always having a great time, but what if I sit with him and it ends up being an hour of us just staring at each other because I can't think of anything to talk about? I mean, that's just, I mean,
It's not going to
would
happen.
that happen? No, of
No,
course it
it's not
wouldn't
going to
happen, but
happen.
it's back here,
I
right?
know that's the monkey mind.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. So I actually brought a list of things. One of my coachings when I'm doing with grieving parents or people who are grieving other types of things, right? Like what we're starting to talk about, we play a game called Grief, Fact, or Crap. And it's a list of statements about grief, very similar to what you're talking about. And then we determine is this a myth or crap, which is what we want to call it, or is it fact? Can I say crap on your show?
Of course, you
Or
can. We've said a
are you
lot worse.
you're
To
not
be
beeping
fair,
me out
we've
every
said
time
a
I
lot
say
worse on
crap,
the
right?
podcast. Yeah, there is no.
Okay.
It's not. I mean, kids can watch, but it's not. We don't go out of our way to make it kid friendly. No, we're very adult and open, Lenny.
Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, so if we're gonna go with the theme of grief, fact or crap, ask me that question again. What was that statement?
Is there a scale? So fact or fact
Fact or
or
crap?
crap? Is there a
Uh-huh.
scale of somebody's grief?
Okay. So I say if someone was to say there is a scale, right, for measuring grief, or your grief is worse than my grief, right? I say crap, absolute crap, absolute crap. And this is why I lost my boys in a horrible automobile accident. So my grief will always be worse than yours. Always.
It's
Now,
your grief.
here's the thing, okay? Who have you lost in your life?
I've lost family
Okay,
members,
so you have.
grandmas.
So
Yeah, my grandma.
okay, so your grandma.
Yeah.
Now, your loss and your grief for your grandma will always, without question, will always be worse than my grief.
Hmm.
Why would that be?
it's my grief. I don't have an understanding of your grief.
Right. And I don't have an understanding of yours.
You don't know
Right.
how much I love my grandma.
No, I don't. You don't understand how much I love my boys.
Mm,
So my grief will never be a thing for you because you don't have to live with it.
mm.
Does that make sense?
Total. 100% makes sense. So
So,
there's no scale to somebody's
no.
grief. Then there's nobody that can say that my grief because of this is more because we don't have that perspective or understanding of it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
your grief is your burden to take.
Now, remember back when we first started talking, I said that I went to that one group, right? And
Yes,
they said, "Oh, I'm so sorry about your loss, but you know what happened to me?"
that's yeah,
Okay. "Oh, well, I'm sorry about your loss and your loss, but this is what happened to me." You
yeah,
know what? Dude, I don't care what happened to you.
yeah,
I care about what happened to me. And what happened to me is ugly, and I have to live with this, not you.
yeah,
I know that it sounds callous, but it's a painful reality.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I can see this is going to be a great podcast, by the way. Lenny, everything about you just, I you know what? But for anybody that's watching this, and I'm guessing that this is not who you were in that. Talk to us about the process of you mentioned the dark time of losing family. You've lost the kids, but you had to move. Talk us through the the annihilation of self,
Sure.
the survivor's guilt, the blaming the whole world, the everyone's an arsehole, or as I would say in
Sure.
Scotland, the C word. I'm not going to say it for a change. Everybody who's watched me knows that, my God, he didn't say the C word for a change. But when you're going through that, blaming the whole world, that pain and that misery,
Right.
explain what that is and why somebody has to go through that.
You mean like a burn the world down kind of situation?
Correct.
You're
Because you're going
talking
to
about?
have what's what's going
Sure.
to go through the mind for Lenny. Kids have died, you've survived, and then the whole you're again. Let's burn the whole world down because I've got this pain. I've got this absolute shite in my life, and while I'm feeling shit, fuck it, I'm going to make everyone else feel shit.
Well, man alive. You just started a 12-week conversation right there is what you
Let's
did.
do it. We're
It's,
here.
it's
We're in it.
that's not a man, that's not a one sentence answer everything you
No,
just
it's not.
talked
I'm not
about.
expecting it to be,
It's
Lenny.
not. No, no, and I know that. Um, I've worked with so many people in regards to their grief, child or parents or whoever. Um, and even looking at my own experience, I would say that the big, how there's so many, but the one statement I could say that encompasses everyone would be no one understands me. Because if no one understands me, then they can't identify with me. They don't know what to say to me. They don't want to hang out with me anymore because people are now uncomfortable with me. So now I'm alone. And when I'm alone, that's when I start getting vices. That's when I start making poor decisions because I'm looking for instant gratification. I'm looking to fill some kind of hole, right? I have nothing to invest or a leader to push me along in a positive direction. And that's what happened to me. Made horrible decisions, um, lost lost my wife. My wife said, "Well, I'm not putting up with this," and I respect her for it. You know,
Mm.
I do. And my family, same thing. Lenny, that this is getting dumb, you know. Started hanging out with a lot of bad people that got me to do a lot of bad things because bad people can manipulate people who are hurting really, really bad. Again, obvious, but not when you're in that situation, right? Not when
But
you're
you're
there.
looking for
You
someone
don't
to
see that kind of
understand.
stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, man, it got so bad that ultimately my mom and dad came to me and they said, Lenny, you need a new life. You need to start over again. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? Everything that I had, everything that ever meant anything to me, my children, my wife, the life I had before is all gone. Right now, it's just me. What am I supposed to do? And they said, find a job. We'll take you there. And I'm like, well, not really sure what that means, but they're like, you can't be here in Oregon anymore. Uh, that hurt. I found a job. Um, this is a crazy story. You'll love this. This is a good one.
I've got a feeling this is the
are,
juicy
are,
one.
are you
Go for
ready? You ready for this? Okay,
it.
here we
Yeah.
go. So, wifeless, childless. I don't want to say familyless, but it was definitely walking on thin ice. It was rough. No job. My parents. I had a little bit of money. I had a little bit of money, and I got. I found a job online in Idaho, right? And so I sent my application, and the recruiter calls me, and I'm talking to the recruiter, and the recruiter says, "Hey, we think you'd be a good fit. Can you come out here to Idaho?" And I'm like, "Sure, whatever." My parents say, "Hey, we're gonna take you out there. You just line everything up." And so I was having trouble with doing the application. I called the recruiter again. We talk, we laugh for a while, and she helps me through it. My parents then take me to Idaho, drop me off at my new apartment, and then turn around and leave. Here I am on my own again, and I have no car. I mean, I'm, I'm all over the place. I'm still just everywhere, but I know that I need a new life, and I know that things need to change. So I'm in a positive place. But still, it's going to be 2 months before my job starts. And I know that Lenny by himself, right, it is a problem. Lenny by himself makes bad decisions. So I call that recruiter. I'm like, hey, I know that the job's not starting yet. There's a new company. But you have to have some kind of like security or maintenance or something I can just come and do, for a couple of months before the job actually starts. And she says, well, we do have a position in a training position, and you're well overqualified for this job. Why don't you come and apply for that? And then you'd be starting very soon because we need you to start training people that are coming forward. So I went down there and met with her. We talked for a while. She was really cool. And I ended up getting that position as well. The thing is, the recruiter, we continued to talk and talk and talk and build a relationship. And I'm married to her now. She's my wife.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. And she's
Felt
amazing.
like I was watching White Lotus there. I'm like, I'm sure I know the outcome. I know the outcome.
Uh,
Married
no,
to her.
you were sitting there thinking, okay, Lenny, your story's getting boring.
No, not at all. I was like everybody watching them, but like,
But yeah, she's in the other room. She's totally cool and love her to death. And the thing is that she's helped me a lot with my grief and the processing of the loss of my boys. And she has her own children who've now become obviously my children.
yeah,
And we've been married now for a long time, and it's good. Everything's good. Everything's really, really good. In 2020, though, uh, to help process my grief, um, that's when the pandemic hit, right?
yeah. So this is when
And
TikTok blew up.
exactly, exactly. TikTok had been around, but in the States, it wasn't like the thing. It wasn't the in thing to do, right? Man, I was bored out of my mind. I was so bored out of my mind. And I thought, hey, this TikTok thing, what is this? And so I start watching TikToks. Oh my gosh, this is funny, but I'll never make a video. Never make a video. But then I did. And I started doing stupid stuff, which didn't do anything, right? I mean, whatever. Everybody wants to be famous, did stupid stuff. But then one day I was having a really hard day with the loss of my boys. And granted, it had been several years after my boys had passed, but if you're stuck in grief, especially something just that has changed your life in such a dramatic way, You'll have days that are good and you'll have days that are really, really ugly. And this was a day I just sat down and I started talking to my phone about my grief and the loss of my boys and the bad decisions I'd made. Um, and I posted it. And within a week, I had 40,000 new followers. Um, they These were all people who had lost children as well, and they were leaving comments like, "Lenny, you just said everything that I've wanted to say for years. Um, Thank you for doing that because I've always been so afraid." I continued to make videos like this about survivor's guilt because that was my big one for a long time.
Mm.
If you were to pull pictures off the internet of the accident, you would look at it and you'd say, "Well, Lenny, there is no reason. There is absolutely no reason why you should have lived and your boys passed." I have a scar on my forehead. That's it. I wasn't no broken legs, no broken arms. I have a scar on my forehead, and my boys died. So that's a big deal for me for a long time. For a long time, that was a big deal for me. But so I would make these videos and I would talk about survivor's guilt and loss and positivity, right? But grief and guilt and everything that comes with that. But again, message after message, comment after comment of, "Lenny, you're saying the things I've always wanted to say. Lenny, you understand, you get it. You know what?" And then I would just start getting questions. Well, what about this? And I would answer it. And what about this? And I would answer it. And then, it, I mean, I have over a quarter million followers now. And of course, they don't all watch my content, obviously, but there is a large majority that do. And they get something out of me talking about loss and grief and survivor's guilt and all of that. So I don't even really know what we're talking about anymore.
It's all right. I let people talk, and a lot of people who know me be like, "I'm really surprised you let people talk," because in other circles they don't. But when it comes to the podcast, no. Lenny, that was
Hey,
obviously beautiful. So I have some questions.
I have some
I
questions for you too, but go ahead.
Yeah, I clearly have not had guilt, sorry, grief as me. I don't know. Well, actually, no. Let me come back to, because it kind of sounds like you became the problem that people were like, "We can't help you process this anymore. You have to move or do something." That must have been hard for your parents. To be fair, knowing what
Oh,
you've gone through,
absolutely.
it's not their grief. They've lost grandkids, so they're upset. The wife is upset that they've lost their children as well.
Hmm.
They've processed it differently,
Hmm.
but they've come and picked you up and said, "Look, son, we love you. You've got to go."
And their best way to help me, which I am not upset with in
No,
any
you're
way,
not. I can tell.
not,
No, I
not
know.
at all. They put me in a truck with all of my few belongings, drove me 8 hours away, dropped me off at an apartment, and said, "Okay, now you need to figure it out." And that's what I did.
And
Yeah,
that was, we would call that tough love in the UK.
yeah, that's what we would call it in a yeah, that's what we would call it here too.
We
Well,
love
here's
you, but we can't be
yeah,
part of this anymore.
but here's your kick in the ass. We can't do it. Yeah. I remember a day when uh, I called my mom and said, "Mom, I need a place to come. I need a place to stay. I don't have anything." And she said, "Look, you need to go down to the homeless shelter. You can't come here anymore because when you come here, you cause lots of problems." And that really bothered me because my mom's supposed to take care of me. But now I look back at it and I get it. I understand.
So you've clearly gone from blaming to accountability,
Yeah. Good
which
call. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
it's
Yes.
the, well, no, it's the change in
Yeah.
consciousness, isn't it? It's the
Yes.
change in
Yes, it is.
consciousness. Instead of the world happens to me, the world happens for me. And now that's, especially when you've lost two kids, that is fucking hard
Yeah.
to go from that. So what would anyone watching this podcast and go, "Lenny clearly understands his stuff"? What do you say to someone who is on their way to hitting rock bottom? Not hit rock bottom, they're on the way to hitting rock bottom.
Okay.
What do you say, Lenny?
So lots of things. I told you earlier that I would say the flagship is people don't understand me anymore, right?
Mm,
People don't know how to talk to me,
yeah.
right? I mean that's the mindset that people start to go through. People don't like me anymore. People don't want to talk to me anymore. People are frustrated around me because they don't know what to say. So now I'm by myself. You need to find people that do understand you, right? And that's not the person standing on the street corner smoking whatever, yada 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 yada. Build your scenario. What I'm talking about is people who've also suffered loss, right? And not like the group that I went to where they were, oh yeah, well, this is what happened to me. Oh yeah, well, this is what happened to me. Not those people. I'm not talking about those people, but people who are just like you. People who understand loss don't want to be in the ugly spot. Those are the people that you need to find. And the thing is, those people aren't everywhere, right? They're not everywhere. You really have to search for them. But in today's society, when you've got Zoom and Teams and all these virtual stuff, it's much easier to find support groups and things like that. Cal, I mean, even off Facebook, you can find that kind of stuff. But also, this is what I do as a coach. People meet with me and I walk them through their grief. But part of what I do, I have groups that I'm comfortable with. I don't want to say advertising, but if you were to come to me and say, Lenny, I'm really suffering from grief, I'm hurting, the loss of my grandma and everything that she meant, to me, I have the resources to be able to say, I know a lady that runs a small group. It's only about 5, 6 people on a good day, but they're all people who've lost their grandparents, whether it be their grandma or their grandfather. And I want to I want to put you in contact with them. They're also in the UK, right? And it's a virtual group. So you don't have to turn your camera on, right? You don't even have to say anything. Just be there and listen to these other people say the same things that you're saying inside your head.
Mm,
That's what I would do.
yeah.
And now you're thinking about it. Okay.
I'm always thinking about the next powerful question that I want to be able to try and we create these podcasts as a place for solutions. And I think
Well, I've
when
got I have a couple more facts or craps if you want one.
let's play before we go into more questions then, because I know you
Okay.
want to play
Go. Oh, I
fact
love
or
it.
crap. I
Okay.
know. Let's play fact or crap about grief. We
I
need
know, I
I
know.
feel like we need an intro song for it.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go. All right.
Right?
And a big banner across the screen. Grief, fact or crap.
Okay.
Okay.
How does it work? How do we play? I always think about my again. I know that I do bring a jovialness to things,
Sure.
and I'm hesitant to say that I'm worried about my cat dying when I'm speaking to a guy who's lost 2 children in a car crash. Because again, I'm going, is my grief not as important as Lenny's, and especially as mine's not happened yet. But I
Okay.
know
Well,
how upset
let's
I'll be if my cat or my dog died.
oh man. Um
How do we play the game?
you triggered me, man.
What with the cat or the dog? Did I really?
Inside. No, no, I mean it's tongue in cheek. The dog talk is what it's called. I mean it's actually a thing inside the grief community. It's called the dog talk. Also the cat talk. When someone comes to you and they say, I understand exactly what you're going through. I lost my dog a year ago. That was said to me at the service of my boys. We're about to go sit down, and I'm walking out of the bathroom. This beautiful, beautiful old lady, very old, says, Lenny, I completely understand what you're going through. I lost my dog a year ago. Obviously, brand new in my grief, at the service for my boys. Um, I'm wanting to not be very nice. I mean, what am I supposed to say to her?
Would you not
Right.
have ripped her a
But
new one and go? I mean, seriously, in knowing how emotions and
sure.
how what? would you not want to punch her in the throat?
Well, exactly. Throat punch. Perfect. But here's the thing, okay? But here's the thing. Um, she's trying to
You.
identify with my grief, right? And the only thing that she has to identify it with or to relate it to is the loss of her dog. And I can tell you this, I don't know if you have a pet.
I've got a
I
dog.
know that, I mean, I have a dog. His name is Hudson. He's beautiful. He and I started a TikTok channel together and we do amazing videos together. It's fun. It's fun. I do a voice thing on him and he's talking to me. It's it's crazy. It's lots of fun.
I will subscribe. I'm hooked already, but carry on.
But the thing is, people, if I was to lose Hudson, I'd be devastated and that would be considered grief. But people try to identify with you and it's not for me, right? And it's not for you. People say things for themselves. If I say, Lenny, I completely understand what you're going through. I lost my dog a year ago. I've now consoled you, right? I've now done my part to try and help you, let you know that I do understand. I know that's kind of a weird one,
I
but
get
it's
it.
not for you, right?
So, are you suggesting that in that moment, the better thing would be to say, I don't know what the fuck you're feeling because that must be brutal,
Well, there's lots of different things you could say, or you could not say anything at all.
but just be with them in the moment.
Just be with them. Or another good one, um, what's your favorite memory about them? And then tell a story, right? Um, best, uh, one of the best. I've talked about this on TikTok. One of the best things that ever happened to me after the loss of my boys. Had a gentleman named Carl come to me, and he said, "You know, I remember." Sorry, man.
No, it's okay. Okay,
uh,
no.
uh, I remember when Dawson was really young, and he would wear that cape. He had a Superman shirt, and it had a cape on the back. And I remember when he would come to Sunday school, and he would run around the room, and the cape would go up, and then all the kids would start to chase him around the room. I remember that, Lenny. I remember when that used to happen. And though it was frustrating to then try and get the kids to sit back down for Sunday school for lesson, it was always fun. And that's something I'll never forget about Dawson, your oldest boy. That was probably one of the best things that was ever told to me because one of the things that parents fear more than anything else is that their child will be forgotten.
Mm.
Here I had his Sunday school teacher coming to me, 8 months later and telling me a story about something my son used to do. To a grieving parent, right? That's one of the best things in the world to hear a story about my boy that someone else remembers. That's a good one.
Mm.
Thanks for opening that old wound, man. No, just kidding. I'm just
What
kidding.
I do, to be fair, it's what I do when I'm coaching my clients. In all
There you
fairness,
go.
Lenny, I do coach a lot of trauma, but I do tell the client before they come to me, I am the root canal of
Hmm.
coaching because we need I try and get down to the root and we pull it out, but it'll be painful. But once we've had that release, um, we can help people move forward with things. But
Let me throw one at you. How about this?
perfect. I want to play the game.
Okay, so grief, factor crap, time heals all wounds.
I think that's crap. I've got a feeling that
Really?
grief doesn't ever go away
Okay, why would you say that?
because I'm sure I can look back to think about the great memories, but there's always going to be a slight sadness that might never leave. That I know I'm not going to be with that person again.
Okay.
And I think that's going to come along when I think about that person. I'll always have that great memory and I'll always have a great thought about them, but there'll always be that sadness. I've got a feeling that grief doesn't ever go away. True. You're the grief coach and expert. Tell me.
Grief doesn't always go away. I mean,
No,
time doesn't heal all
no.
wounds. It doesn't. But what I coach and what I advocate for is called good grief, right? Um,
Mm,
you can have memories, right? And even sad ones, right? But you can spin them into good grief. Still makes me sad, but I get that smile in the side of my mouth. Would you like to see an example? I can show you an example. I actually have one on my desk.
let's do it.
Would you like to see
Oh,
it? Okay.
absolutely, Lenny.
Okay. One of the things I said, good grief. One of the tools I use in my coaching, we create what's called a good grief box. Okay. My boys were into Legos. They were super into Legos. My oldest boy, Dawson, did Lego robotics competitions, and I'm sure they have them where you're at as well. It's basically a computer um, with Legos. And you program it to like move and do stuff. It's crazy. So I have this box, right? And it's a Lego. Cool, right?
Yep.
So inside my box, this is my good grief box, okay? Inside, I have lots of stuff, right? All things that remind me of my boys. This is probably explains good grief the best. You have M&Ms? You
We
have
do in the
M&Ms over
UK.
there.
Yes, yeah, we do have
Yeah.
M&Ms. Yeah,
So you have
not just an
M&Ms, so you know
American
what
thing.
these are, right?
Yeah,
It's not
you have
just
M&Ms.
an American thing.
Not just an American thing.
We were at a Lego competition, right? Dawson was competing with his team at state, actually. State is, I see,
Just
I
before
don't remember.
college.
No, 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 no. It's like you do a competition and you won, so you advance, and now you're doing the competition and you won, so you advance again. Now it's all the best people in the state are
Oh,
playing the
so in each,
competition.
so for the UK, that
Competition.
would be in each postcodal area. So yeah, I get that.
Okay, so um, he is he's doing the competition, and while he's doing that, Devin, his youngest brother, his only brother, his young brother, my youngest child, he and I are eating peanut M&Ms, right? And I eat some, I hand it to him, he eats some, I take it, hand it, da 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 da, back and forth because we're sharing. And because I'm a stinker of a dad, uh, and I'm joking around, I ate the last one, and I handed him the empty bag. And he reaches in, there's nothing in there, and he says, "You ate the last one." He goes to give it back to me, and I said, "Whoa." I said, "Whoa, you touched it last. You've got to throw this away." Dad. Later that day, I found the wrapper in my pocket, right? He didn't throw it away. He folded it up and stuck it in my pocket. And I took it out and I said, "You were supposed to throw this away." And with a stern voice, "You were supposed to throw this away." And I go to hand it to him. What does he say?
Oh, you touched it last.
Yeah. You touched it last. You need to throw it away.
Brilliant.
So we went home and I stuck it underneath his pillow, right? A few days later, he grabs it, comes in. "You stuck this underneath my pillow." And I said, "Whoa, you touched it last. You got to throw it away." A couple days later, I find it in my sock drawer, right? We start doing this back and forth, back and forth. And then we had the automobile accident, right? And Dawson and Devin died. About a week later, I found an M&M's wrapper underneath my underwear in my sock drawer, my sock and my underwear drawer. Now, I can look at an M&M's bag and I can get sad and I can start to cry because I miss my boys. Or I can go down the road of good grief. I can look at the M&M's package and go, "Damn it. Do you remember when he snuck this into my underwear drawer? When he snuck this and put it in my jacket? Every time I said, hey, 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 and he looked at me and said, whoa, you touched it last. You need to throw it away. And then I smile in the side of my mouth because I spun it from bad grief, where I cry, to good grief, where I could still cry, but I'm also smiling because it's a fun story, right? That's something that I coach, is finding good grief opportunities rather than ugly grief opportunities. Because I mean, come on, man, grief is ugly.
It
Grief's
is.
bullshit. I mean,
Yeah.
grief is crap. And that's what it is. But it doesn't have to be. And this is a prime example. So one thing I do when we're coaching is we put together a good grief box. My Lego box I showed you, it's a Lego, which represents my boys. It's what they were into, and it's filled with stuff just like this that I can look at and I can remember the good story. So when I have bad days, right, I can reach in and I can pull out my M&M package and go, that was a good day. That was a good day.
Absolutely.
There you go. I got one. Got another one for you.
I love it. Bring it on.
All right. Grief is not just about death. So,
Ooh,
grief,
facts or
fact or
crap?
crap, grief is not
Not
just
just
about
about
death.
that is fact. It's not loss of
It's not?
identity. I'm. Am I good or am I way off?
I don't know. Let's talk about it.
I would
Why?
say that loss of identity is part of grief. Loss of
Okay.
like Nestor syndrome. When your kids go off to university and you've got lost, it's grief. It's a grief of identity, and that can have a massive part in your emotional state.
So, you're saying that grief can come from lots of things,
Yes,
not just death.
correct.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that. Like what? You said, oh, I didn't say you're right. So let me just throw a couple out. Um, Dog runs away. Could that be grief?
Is the dog coming back?
No, runs
I
away.
think if a dog runs away, yeah, grief, 100%.
Okay, grief. Let's say family member moves away.
Depends which family member, to be fair.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
And I'm the one that moved away from family. So I'm sure if my family to answer that, oh, we're not lost. I would say, yeah, that if it was a close knit family. Think
Okay.
of like Nestor's empty nest syndrome.
Sure, absolutely. How about this? What about a job?
It's loss of identity. If you've been a postman for 25 years and you get told you're no longer a policeman, postman, you wake up the morning after and you go, "Oh,
I'm
I'm a
old.
well, what am I? I'm not a postman anymore." You've got loss of identity. That is grief.
Sure, I've lost my friends.
Yeah,
I've lost my job.
yeah.
I've lost my income, right? Which ultimately could mean now I've lost my happiness because I'm extremely stressed, right? Because how am I going to pay rent now, right? I mean, all kinds of stuff. So let me throw this one at you. I told you that one of the biggest things that I hear all the time, the number one, Lenny, no one understands me anymore. No one wants to hang out with me anymore because they don't know how to communicate with me about my grief. When someone loses their child or their grandmother, they don't just lose their children or their grandmother.
They've lost a
I've now
person.
also lost all my friends because they don't know how to talk to me. So now I've got two guilts, right? Or not guilt, sorry. We can talk about guilt in a
Because
second.
guilt's
But now
different. I mean, yeah,
guilt is
absolutely.
different. But now I've got two griefs, don't I? I'm
Yeah.
grieving the loss of my children. I'm grieving my my friends, right, that don't want to hang out with me anymore. Um, I'm what else? I would be grieving, well, yeah, family, because now maybe my brother or my sister they don't know how to talk to me either, right? So now I've not just lost my children. You've not just lost your grandma. So many facets to it. There's so many more things. I didn't lose my sister, right? But if she's not around anymore, right? And it's because I lost my boys, I've now lost twice. And you can build the scenario, right? You can just
Mm.
keep going on all the things that you lose. So someone who loses someone, it's ugly. It definitely can be ugly.
I mean, a lady going through menopause, they've gone from feeling like a woman one day to not knowing who they are. That's loss,
Okay. Now I'm getting
right?
uncomfortable. We're talking about
Why?
girl stuff, man.
No, it's
I'm not good with
loss.
that stuff.
It's loss. It's not girl stuff. It's
No,
loss.
you're
It's
right.
a loss of
You're right.
identity.
Sure. Well, okay. Mothers after they lose children, and I'm sure that my ex-wife did. I'm not a mother anymore. For you, I'm not a grandson anymore. Is that? I mean, these are these are real things, right? These are real things. So let me hit you with another one. Oh man. Oh, here we go. I just looked at my list. If you're not crying, you're not grieving.
Ooh, that's got to be crap. That has got to be crap because everyone.
Why?
I, I love the fact you asked me why. Because some people won't be able to cry because they've not been able to release that emotion yet. So just because they're not crying doesn't mean to say that they're not grieving. So
Well, if
going
they're
on
not
that
crying, what are they doing? If they're not
processing,
crying, processing, what does that look like? That's
well,
not tears.
well, no, because everyone's going to a different process. Do you know
Okay,
through this conversation, what I've been going through is why have I got a my parents who are still with us have always given me a what I would say is a realistic point of view on death. And even I'm going through the process when we're chatting, I'm like, how did I end on my grandma's death? And my mum and dad were like, look, it was a time. The time was up. It's
sure.
badly for all of us. I've gone through the process with my mum and dad, and I'm like, I've come to terms with the fact that they are getting older because they brought us up that way. So everyone's got a different processing system for grief and things like that. If it was my wife that died tomorrow, God, that wells me up just thinking about it. Jesus Christ,
Sure.
that would be fucking brutal. I wouldn't be able. That would be catastrophic. So I get that part, but crying doesn't automatically mean processing, does it?
No. Just to get ugly for a minute, let's say you did have that loss tomorrow.
Mm,
Okay. Okay.
mm.
Let's say you did. And you picked up your podcasting microphone and you hucked it against the wall and it shatters all over the place. Okay. Would that be grief? You're not crying. You're not crying.
It would be grief. It would be
It would
anger.
be grief. Okay.
So I
It
mean,
would
you've
be
got
anger.
it
Okay.
would
So
be
that's
anger.
that. Yeah. Okay. Um, okay. Here we go. You go out to the refrigerator and you just start eating everything. You're not even hungry anymore,
I might
right?
be
You're not
struggling
even
with guilt. I
hungry.
might be struggling with grief then.
Well, but that's what I'm asking, right? Okay. Could that be expressing grief? It's not tears, but it's overeating, right? But let's
Mm.
flip it. Okay. Let's flip it to you open up the refrigerator and you don't eat anything at all. You've got a big old smoked roast just sitting in there waiting for you to dig
So
into and
American.
make a
You were
sandwich.
just straight so American on that
you
one.
got you got charred fat on the outside. I mean, this thing's good to go, right? You got a hoagie. You're ready to slap it down, man. Um, oh, okay, here we go. Here we go. And a pint. Is that what you call them? And a
Yeah.
pint. Okay. And you're looking at it and you're like, no, I'm not hungry. I don't want to eat it. No, no, don't want to.
Mm.
Is that grief? It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything you do when you're trying to process loss is considered grief. It doesn't have to be tears.
Yeah.
But the world believes that, don't they? That's
Yeah.
why it's crap. That's why it's a myth, right?
How have I done on the game, to be fair?
Crap. No.
It's me looking for validation for Lenny, who I only met 45 minutes ago, an hour ago. And I'm like, I think I did good. I think I did good on the quiz.
This is
Very
the
British
thing.
thing for us,
Okay.
want to do well on a quiz.
Here's the thing about grief factor crap. Okay. Um, is there a right and wrong answer? No. There's not right. Are they all fact? Maybe. Are they all crap? Maybe. The point is this, and this is the entire point of the whole game. You will not be able to process your loss. You won't be able to address your grief and walk down that road of to find good grief, like what I told you. That's what I coach, good grief, until you start thinking about these kinds of things, right? My neighbor says to me, time heals all wounds. Why did they say that to me? Because I don't know if that's actually true. Do you see what I'm saying? It's
Absolutely.
if we're going to process our grief and walk down that road, I need to also understand why people believe the things that they do. Why do people say things to me that they think they're helping me by saying, I lost my dog last year. I
Mm.
understand exactly what you're going through. In
'Cause it
my
makes them
mind,
feel
throat
uncomfortable.
punch. Throat
Yeah,
punch done, old lady, I don't care, right? I don't care. You
yeah.
shouldn't have said, right? Um, but why? Why did she say that to me? And if I don't understand those kinds of things, I'm not going to be able to fully process my grief because this is one of the ugliest parts about processing your grief. I have to show grace to all these people that don't understand. Because they don't understand, they're not going to say the right things to me
Mm.
and they're not going to do the right things for me. And you know what? I don't want you to know what it's like to lose a child. That's the last thing. Even if you're my worst enemy, I don't want you to know what it feels like. And if that is true, then how can I expect you to know what to say to me? How can I get mad at you for saying the wrong thing to me if I don't want you to know what it feels like? That's not fair. I mean, right? That's not fair for me to get mad at you for saying the wrong thing when I know that you don't know what the right thing to say is because you've not lost a child. You've not lost a grandma, right? And I don't want you to have that feeling, even if you're my worst enemy. So it's a catch 22. Grace is the answer. To fully process my grief and to walk down that road, I need to have an understanding and grace of people around me. And man alive, that's it sounds dumb saying, but isn't it true?
I don't know if I've got the amount of grace that you might have,
Okay. All right.
if I'm being honest. I
Sure.
and I have chats when we get the guests on and things like that, and I'm like, I don't have grace for people sometimes. I used to have a lot, but it just slowly but surely seems to get took away from me, and
Sure.
I'm like, I'm getting less and less grace for people.
What do we do with that?
I'm just accepting that some days I'm going to be a bit of a cunt, and I did say the c word.
It's going to say, you said the C word, man. That's
That's
a rough
yeah.
one.
It's
So,
it's not in Scotland where we're from. No, not we use it as
you better
punctuation.
not get me canceled.
Oh
That's the
God,
C
no,
word here in America.
no, no. It's I don't have grace for some people. It's something I have been struggling with recently. To be fair, so for a gentleman of your stature to say have grace, I think it's highly commendable. Highly commendable. Great. Where does grace end, Lenny? I think that's the because it's grace and empathy, isn't it?
It's grace and empathy for the people
Where
that aren't
where does
suffering
it
like you
end?
are.
At what point? Let's look at your parents. Let's have a look at your parents with what they
Okay.
did. At what
Sure.
point did their empathy and grace for you stop and go, look, son, I'm sorry, we're going to drive you 8 hours? Did they have the grace and the empathy to go, this is the best for him? Or did they have to say, You can't come out of the house because you're going to cause too much trouble. Where was the grace and the empathy there?
Well,
And
but
I'm not attacking your parents.
yeah.
What I'm saying, I actually
No,
think
no,
they
no,
did
no, no.
they
Because
did the right thing.
I think you brought a really good question to the table, and I would love to sit and talk about this for an hour. Um, you're asking at what point does grace and empathy stop, right?
And we can
Okay.
do that if you want.
So when they brought me to Idaho and they dropped me off here, I don't think that was their end of empathy and grace. I think that was a part of their empathy and grace. All right, you coming and staying at the house? We're going to have you do that. That didn't work out. All right, we're going to have you try and stay at the house again. That didn't work out. Again, it didn't work out. You know what? For empathy and grace, we're going to take you somewhere else. We're going to try it there. So we take me 8 hours away and we drop me off. Still empathy and grace. Would you agree? Because it wasn't.
It's a tricky one.
It is, and I think that's why we could talk about it for a while. It
I
would be
don't.
the end of empathy and grace if, boom, Lenny, there you are, have a good life. But that's not what it was. And I see my mom all the time. Since then, my father has passed. That's a whole nother thing. But I don't think that was the end of empathy and grace. I don't think that it was. You know what? Let's take it a step further. Could we say that it was a start of a new empathy and grace? Because it's different. It's completely different empathy and grace than before. If we're still calling it empathy and grace, I would never call it abandonment. Never, ever. Abandonment would be we're taking you to the UK, dropping you off, and never talking to you again. You know, that would
Eight
be.
hours though. 8 hours is a big distance, to be fair. But that so this is a great conversation because it's and in fact something like this in our family did happen. Is like, at what point do you set the boundary of you're not doing this anymore because it's starting to affect us? Now you 100% sound like you understood that where you were wasn't good, and you
Mm-hmm.
had to make those changes. So that tough love is still empathy and
Yeah,
grace, isn't it? But it's not.
yeah, it is.
You now understand how to not make that a victim thing of, oh, my parents were shit and they shouldn't have done that, because you moved up the consciousness state. You clearly moved out of the world's against me to the world is for me.
Mm-hmm. No,
I
I agree.
just think that's, yeah. But would you see that in the moment? Or were you like,
No,
assholes?
no, well, no, never said that. Never said
Internally?
that.
Internally?
No, no.
Be
No, I
honest.
love my parents very much. Um, they, I know that even when my mom said, go down to the homeless shelter, my mom still loved me, right?
Mm,
I knew that, um, I knew at that point that things were rock bottom when
mm,
your parents won't take you in. And that was when I had to start thinking about, okay, something's not right. I've been playing the victim for too long,
yeah.
right? So something needs to change. Now, what does that look like, right? Uh, that I think is the answer. That's where grace was not gone. Grace was not, empathy, all of it was not gone. It's just now it's going to be different. And your grace and empathy, you'll still get from us, but it's going to look different because
Yeah.
you need to not be the victim anymore. You can't have this place to run back to, right? And then once things are better, you leave, which
Yeah.
is what I was doing. So never shook a fist at them. Never did that because they loved me. I don't know, man. We're shooting all over the place with that one. That's a weird one. This would be an excellent question to bring seven other people on here and we just debate it back and forth. That one
Absolutely.
in itself, where does grace stop?
Where does grace
That's
and empathy stop? It's a
yeah.
question I keep asking quite a few of the people that I get on, is where, and I think I'm asking that question purely from a me point of view. do we constantly be empathetic to people, or at what point do you draw the line and go, fuck off?
Okay. I think I have it. I think I have the answer, and this isn't fun. When does grief end?
Doesn't.
So if I'm going to fully process or walk through, continue throughout my entire life, processing my grief, even in good grief, and if we're saying we both agree that part of grief is showing grace, then when would grace end?
According to that equation,
Okay, according to that
never,
equation.
never. And
Now,
I
now,
suppose
does
it
it
comes from,
change? Does the grief change? And does
yes,
the grace
doesn't mean
change?
grace changes.
The grace
I
changes, but
love
the grief
you.
changes too. Grief
I
changes
love
too.
you, and you are my family member, but I'm not dealing with it. But you need to understand I love you, and I still love you,
Yeah.
but we're not being a part of this part of you at this moment in time. That's
Yep.
still showing grace, but setting the boundary.
Boundaries, the B word.
Fucking hate them sometimes, to be fair.
Oh man. All right. You want to hit another one on the list? Or are we almost done? What are we doing, man?
Lenny, where do you want to? So, well, the the whole process of this has been fascinating, by the way, Lenny.
Okay.
Genuinely fascinating. So, is it weird to say it's so enjoyable talking to you about grief? And thank you for what you bring to the table when you're talking about grief. At what point is the difference between a victim story and the stories on TikTok that help other people? Because
Hmm.
that's there's a different tonalities, and I've not seen your video, so I apologize. But
No, it's all right.
telling the world your story on TikTok,
Sure.
how was that not perceived as a victim talking to think talking? This is how
Okay.
I feel.
No, that is an excellent question. That is so good. That is so good. Uh, with COVID, you couldn't go anywhere, right? Couldn't go talk to a coach, couldn't go talk to a counselor or anything like that. We just started getting into the whole virtual space of meeting with people and stuff like that. Um, talking to my phone, right, about my feelings kind of became what it was for me. I didn't have anyone else to talk to, right? I mean, of course, I had my wife. I mean, obviously, my mom's always on the phone. I could always give her a call. I could talk to my mom about it. But if you were to sit down and watch my videos, you would see that um, for 5 years, most of my videos are right here. Background looks the same, right? The same back wall, same cat stand, same, you know, um, because I would just set my phone up and I would talk about my feeling that day, or I would answer someone's question that day. Those were never victims. Those were, I needed to express my feeling. I just thought of a memory about Dawson, something that he used to do, and I want to share it with you. And I would say it. And it became something because, well, like I had said, people would leave me comments about you're saying things that I've always wanted to say, or how. That's a big one. Used to get that all the time and still today. How to say what I'm trying to say and don't know how to say, right? Um, yeah. Lots of private DM kind of stuff, asking me questions and then just questions in the comments and things like that. And it became I'm not alone anymore.
Mm,
There are people out there, there are way more people out there who've lost a child than I knew about.
mm,
That's that's when the victim goes away because I'm not alone anymore. Because what did I tell you in the very beginning when we first started talking? The big trigger for everybody, which sends them down the spiral. Do you recall?
Yeah,
Come on, man. It was an hour ago. Okay.
it was. I don't feel like anyone understands me.
Yeah, because I'm alone.
'Cause
No
I'm
one
alone.
wants to talk to me anymore, right? Because they don't identify with the things that I say. They don't understand what it's like to lose someone. So I started making videos where I was just expressing myself, how I felt, and what survivor's guilt meant to me. And people identified with that. People who'd lost children, and they were like, here's Lenny, who has gone through what I've gone through, and even more because he lost two. You and I talked about that, the difference, right? Um, he understands it, and I'm going to listen to him and what he has to say. Some of my videos are short, like 20 seconds, and then some are more like 3 minutes. It's what it is. It's all I got, man. I got nothing
No,
else.
it's not all you've got, Lenny. It's been absolutely fascinating. And thank you so much for coming on. Is there anything that you want to share with the Mind Management Mentors family, as we should probably start calling them?
Sure.
But is there anything that you want to share that it's if you were to well, let's finish on this then. At what You're a grief coach. I'm guessing you're not an ambulance chaser and you go and find people who've got grief and
Oh,
say,
no.
"Look, I'm here to help you." I know that there's nothing about Lenny that would
No,
suggest that.
no, I don't leave business cards at funeral homes. No, I don't do any of
Right.
that kind of stuff.
I'm
No.
sure there's a lot of people that do that. But at what point, when you see someone going through,
Hmm.
do you sit and give them presence and grace? Or at what point do you say, maybe it's time I need to take you to Idaho on an 8 hour plane, 8 hour drive?
Hmm. I want to help everybody, but you can't do that.
No,
You want to talk to everybody on your podcast, but
absolutely.
you can't,
No.
right?
You
But
can
you
only
can.
help the ones that want help, right?
Exactly. I can, I mean, I don't like the word preach, but I mean, I can preach to you till I'm blue in the face,
Yeah.
but if you don't want to hear it,
You're
not
not
going to
ready.
make a difference.
Absolutely.
It's not going to matter. And that's where I was for a long time. Remember, we
How
talked about
long were you in that space of not wanting to listen to someone preach?
years. Um, yeah, years.
When
But
you say years, what do you mean by years? Two, three, four, five?
easily, no, not five, four, three, four.
So
Um,
four
but but
years.
since yeah, because it happened in 2011. But here's the thing, um, you're trying to now put a timeline on grief, and you can't do that.
I'm not putting no, don't no, I'm not trying to put a timeline on
I'm
grief.
not. I'm,
No,
okay.
I'm trying to understand the timeline of when does somebody decide they want to talk to someone or listen to someone.
No,
That's
you
the
can't.
difference.
No, you can't. That's on my list of the facts or craps. We just didn't get to it. Um, it's but it is timeline. Okay. Um, and I'll explain. Actually, let me explain it this way. Um, not soccer, football. Right. That's what you call it. Football.
I
You're
understand soccer though, it's all right.
okay.
I was in America for a long
Yeah.
time, so you're all right.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the game soccer? Okay. So you're playing football, fall down, break your arm, right? How long is it going to take to fix your arm? I mean, I don't really know.
I
They
don't
ca
know.
they cast it, what, a couple weeks? No, more than a couple weeks. Month?
Okay,
They cast it?
carry on with the analogy then.
All right. So the point is this. They will cast it, right? It gets better, it gets stronger. They cut off the cast and then your arm's not broken anymore, right? The world tends to do the same thing with grief, right? A year's gone by now, right? There's your timeline. A year's gone by. Shouldn't you be over this by now, right? We talk about your grandma, right? When it first happened, you were devastated, right? A month later, if someone came to you and said, well, it's been a month, shouldn't you be over this by now? There's the throat punch, right? Leave me alone, man. 2 months, a year, that's where you're starting to fall into that timeline again, right? And someone comes to you and says, shouldn't this be over by now? Shouldn't you be making good decisions by now? Maybe, but there's Lenny over here. He's had loss too, and he's in the bottom of the bottle still, right? So two different griefs, two different losses. Not I'm not talking people, children, and grandparents. I'm not going there. I'm just saying grief and loss, right? If you handle it easier than I do, awesome. But because of that, and because grief is different and how everybody processes it differently, can't put a timeline on it. So that would be a crap, right? Grief doesn't have a timeline. So to say, Lenny, how long does it take for somebody to get out of it? I don't know, man. It's easier. It's easier if you have someone to walk you through it, which is what I do as a grief coach, help people walk through it, right? I didn't have that. I uh, I had that, but I refused that because I wasn't ready yet.
That's
There you go.
that was the I think that was more for the aim of the timeline is like I'm
Ah,
sure there was
very good.
people around
Yeah,
that could have helped, but you weren't ready. So it was what was the turning point of I'm going to have to be ready or
Idaho. The 8 hour drive to Idaho, drop off. Lenny, you got to figure this shit out. Sorry, I swore on your podcast.
fine. It's no worse than what I've said in the podcast. Lenny, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure being here, man. This was a lot of, well, I mean, like what you said, um, don't want to call it fun because it's an
No,
ugly
because
subject, right?
we're talking about grief and
Yeah,
horrible.
talking about grief and loss and all that. But remember, I did say that grief's an ugly thing, but it doesn't have to be an ugly thing. We can sit down and we can talk about it. We can laugh about it. And we can do stupid shit. It doesn't have to be sitting here in tears and crying and I'm never going to see my boys again. I can talk about M&Ms.
Beautiful. It was a beautiful story as well. It was a beautiful story. I've always got one story stuck in my head about my grandma that I still think about, and it makes me
Tell
giggle and
me,
laugh now.
please, please,
I
please.
will. I'll share it because we walked, and funnily enough, she had a heart attack a couple of days after. But we walked because I'd always seen my grandma as this fit person, and I said, "Oh, well, I'll walk home because I used to stay the weekends with my grandma." So we'd walk home over to Penistone, over the Stott. It's called the Stott. But we'd have to go over the field to get to the Stott, and we just kept walking. And my grandma just kept picking up these golf balls, and she was like, "Oh, there's golf balls everywhere. There's golf balls everywhere. Craig, do you want a golf ball? Craig, do you want a golf ball?" And I was like, "No, they're playing golf down there, Grandma. It's their balls. Put them back. Put them back. Are you sure you don't want a golf ball?" I'm like, "No, I don't play golf." Because it was just this big open field that the people would be playing golf down. It wasn't a golf course. It was just funny. But and I still have that, and I remember we walked home. It was about a mile and a half, and then I know that I suppose when as a child, and then she didn't die after the heart attack, but I remember I kind of blamed myself that I'd made her go for a walk and then
Of
we made
course.
a heart.
Of course you did. Yeah.
I've not thought about that for a while, but I do. I still think about my grandma in always good grief, in always good grief.
Yeah.
No, thank you.
But see, okay, so that time right there that we just shared, okay, um, just with that piece, when you and I would sit down and put together your grief box, right, your good grief box, I would have you put in a golf ball so that then on your bad day with your grandma, you can open up your good grief box, you can pull out a golf ball, and you can hold that golf ball and you can say, God damn it. Remember that day? Remember that day, Grandma, when you kept saying to me, do you want a golf ball? Do you want a golf ball? Do you want, I don't want a golf ball, Grandma. That was a good day. That was a good day.
It was.
That's good grief, man.
That's good
That's
grief.
what I coach.
Lenny, this was enlightening. This was an absolute pleasure. I have a feeling we will do more, to be fair.
I would like that very much, please.
Yes, absolutely. And with 270,000 followers on TikTok, I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you. I think if there's ever I always say this, I always try and start and finish it with it. If it's in the mind, it can be managed. And our memories are in our mind. They're there to help us and to sometimes
yeah.
push us if we allow them to. But you know what? We can have good grief. And that's a beautiful thing to walk away with, Lenny, is there's
Thank you.
always a possibility of good grief. And I know that we don't feel it and we don't want to feel it, but that's the gift. That's the gift we can always find.
Sometimes you need someone to walk you down that road to find the good grief, and you need to be willing to let them do it.
And Lenny, I'm sure you are the man to be able to hold the hand from a place of experience.
Yeah. Thank you.
You know, it's been a pleasure, Lenny. And as always, big love from Cuddy. And we'll see you in the next episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed.
Have a good day.